onto the front page of The Guardian, Iran. Israel is vowing no let-up as the US says the war to end in weeks, which I thought they'd said a few weeks ago anyway.
Yeah, it feels like every time I'm on this show with you, we're reading out this headline and this exact copy, which is basically the US saying everything's under control, this is going to wrap up in a few days, and Iran saying, no, it's not, and Israel saying, no, it's not, which is essentially what we have here. So Marco Rubio, who is the Secretary of State in the US, told some reporters at the G7 yesterday that they expect the war in Iran to conclude within weeks, not months. And he says when we are done with them in the next couple of weeks, they'll be weaker than they've been in recent history. But of course, Iran is remaining defiant, and Israel Katz, the Israeli defense minister, has also says that the firing is continuing and, they want to continue the attack in Iran. So we have several different accounts.
Yeah.
Of what's going on. I think we're none the wiser, and it doesn't look like this is going to wrap up anytime soon because despite there being talks, we don't know who the US really are speaking to, and we don't know what the off-ramp looks like or what the US would decide is a victory and therefore retreat.
Well, so Rubio's saying over in weeks, but Trump's given a 10-day deadline when they're going to stop bombing the energy infrastructure. So you'd imagine he thinks it's going to be over in 10 days or the next 10 days. There's been a complete divergence between Israel and the US on what their strategy is. Whether the US had a strategy in the first place is still up for discussion, whereas Israel clearly has a strategy to inflict as much damage on what it perceives as its enemies as possible. It doesn't, and ground troops potentially being shipped to the region, but Rubio saying we're not going to use ground troops.
Yeah, it's a lot of conflicting stuff, and you could say some of this is the US's bargaining position. You throw out a bunch of information, you see what sticks. You'd be prepared to put your boots on the ground because that might make Iran more likely to concede. But ultimately, I don't think Donald Trump really has a strategy here. And as you say, we don't even know why this happened in the first place. It looks like it may have been led by Israel. We also don't know what they would conceive as victory, possibly destroying Iran's nuclear or missile capabilities. OK, but what comes next?
Yeah, and Israel might have a very different idea of what victory looks like. And Iran as well, even though there's this optimistic talk about negotiations with Iran, so far Iran has said that's not actually happening, it's not true. And even if the US decides it wants out, will Iran just carry on carrying out strikes?
Exactly, and the US had said that there was a 15-point plan for peace, but we don't actually know what the contents of that plan are. Donald Trump had said that the first 2 or 3 points had been achieved. What are they? How have they been achieved? Who are the discussions ongoing with? There don't seem to be any discussions at all, but pressure is mounting on Donald Trump. We know that overnight 12 US soldiers have been injured, and the more those numbers keep escalating, the more the pressure will be on Donald Trump. But you just have no sense at all that there is a grown-up in charge in the US. We don't know that Marco Rubio is being accurate. Donald Trump changes his position all the time. I mean, it was just about a week ago that he said the war was over.
Yeah.
And that regime change had been successful because the regime had changed.
Yeah.
Who knows?
And we don't know how much he's playing to a home market.
Exactly.
And the markets themselves, yeah. Should we take a look at how this is impacting us here in the UK, Katrina? The front of the Daily Mail focuses on petrol. Obviously, prices are going up and that's causing a lot of concern. So what's the Daily Mail's take on this?
Well, the boss of Asda is really hitting back at the government. There was some inflammatory language used recently by the government saying that they were going to crack down on any retailers who were ripping off consumers at the pumps. But I'm so sorry, the Asda chairman, Alan Layton, is saying that is absolutely not the situation here. We are very limited in what we can do. The prices are going up, and really you wonder if Rachel Reeves is going to have to step in and do something about maybe alleviating fuel prices, because this is a huge issue for consumers. The prices haven't gone up to the sort of levels that they were at around about the start of the Ukraine war, but they are reaching a point where it is going to be very problematic for Keir Starmer and for the government, because people are feeling this cost of living. And we're coming up, of course, on the Easter weekend when people want to be fueling up their cars and heading away for the weekend. So that pressure is really building.
Yeah, but I remember prices being higher than $1.50 a litre in the past, and we know that gas and electricity prices have been higher previously as well. I mean, others are saying we're going overboard when government finances are not in a particularly great state in trying to provide help. Nevertheless, Katrina, it does, inside the Daily Mail, linked to this piece, they've got a list of what other countries are doing, cutting VAT on fuel, for example, whereas the government have said, well, we've frozen fuel duty.
Yeah,
freezing is not cutting, is it?
And then the point the article seems to be making is, that they're suggesting that retailers could profiteer. They're not saying it's happening, but they're saying we're going to clamp down hard if they do profiteer. But they're saying, well, it's actually government's making money out of this, because higher prices mean higher rates of VAT and tax. And the suggestion is that perhaps that's where cuts could be made. But I guess Rachel Reeves is desperate for every penny in her pocket.
Yeah, and there's always going to be, whenever there's a time of crisis, there's going to be a lot of finger-pointing about who can alleviate some of the pain that people will feel. But ultimately, the tools that the government have at their disposal to try and alleviate some of that suffering that is going to be as a result of higher oil prices is quite limited. This is a global problem. As you say, all the countries across the world are going to feel the impact of this. You can try and do something about, price gouging or profiteering, but ultimately this is a global conflict, and we live in an interconnected world where those things affect all of us.
And one of the problems is that when Donald Trump speaks very positively about progress being made, the markets start to calm. But then, of course, 2 minutes later, he's saying something else, and everything
tweets something
again.
Yeah.
And so, should we leap ahead, Matt, to the Eye, because it's sort of connected to this in a way. Their headline is that the UK is already in a war economy mindset. 50% of the public are cutting their spending.
So this is some that the Eye paper has done. Says 21% of people in the UK are spending less on eating out, 20% are spending less on fuel, 19% less on big purchases, 17% less on home energy. Over a third say they have not changed their behaviour, but that means, of course, almost two-thirds say they have. Just basically trying to capture the views and the responses of people in the face of this crisis. Interestingly, half say that the UK should drill more North Sea oil and gas, which I think, obviously that has been presented over the last week, particularly by the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, as a excellent solution. Why hasn't the government just thought of it for trying to alleviate some of the pain of fuel prices? There are many reasons why that is a kind of populist answer and won't work, not least because it's not something that instantaneously can produce more oil and gas and bring down prices overnight. Also, the public split on blame for cost of living squeeze, torn between Labour, Trump and the Tories. It's really interesting because obviously there was a cost of living crisis before this Labour government came in. The sort of things that Rachel Reeves were doing to try and make life easier for people has completely been offset by, what is going on in the rest of the world. And I think it's quite interesting that actually you're seeing a lot of Brits now placing the blame on Donald Trump and Donald Trump's foreign policy for the pain they are feeling. That, might actually be a little bit of a boost for Keir Starmer, because he can say, look, all the stuff we're doing is being offset by something that has nothing to do with us and that we don't even want to get involved in.
Do you think that's right? Do you think that the public will see it as Trump's fault, not Starmer's fault?
I think that definitely seems to be the situation at the moment, and the war in Iran is very unpopular. We see Keir Starmer setting the tone for this and saying that he's not going to shift on his position, and he has managed to handle that quite well. I think one of the stats from the front of the Eye that stood out to me was that half of people in the UK are saying we should drill more in North Sea oil and gas. And from a Scottish perspective, that's interesting, because this is one of the discussions that is ongoing around the elections that we have coming up in Holyrood. And we have big pressure from Reform UK in Scotland. We had Richard Tice saying, drill, baby, drill. Kemi Badenoch is putting pressure as well on this, but the SNP is very against more North Sea oil and gas drilling. So this is going to be quite a political conversation that we're having north of the border as well.
Scotland's pretty good at renewables as well, by the way. And, you hear from energy bosses like Greg Jackson at Oxbus, who would like to see more energy exploration in the short term in the North Sea, but also is keen to say it's cheaper to have wind and solar as well. So perhaps people should remember the broad energy mix here, rather than just going gas in the North Sea is the solution to our problems.
Yeah,
here.
the long-term solution is more renewables.
Yeah. Let's turn our attention to a different story, Kat, on the front page of The Sun. They are leading with Tiger Woods, hate to say it, latest car crash.
Yes, and I think the key word there is latest. This isn't the first time that Tiger Woods has been in trouble for similar situations. He's had 2, I think 3 car crashes previously, and you have to
Possibly
wonder...
even 4. Possibly even 4, I think, is the number.
You have to wonder why there hasn't been more of an intervention by this point, why he's still driving. I'm not really sure what the US driving laws are like, whether they have a point system, but you would think that he would have had his licence removed by this point, or there would have been some sort of intervention. But I think when it comes to celebrities and these kinds of issues, there is a little more sympathy than there would be for an ordinary member of the public. But it does seem like if he continues along this route, then far worse might happen.
Yeah, look, he's made his mistakes, and this looks like another one, but plenty of people still have some sympathy with him, wondering if there's something more to this than just having a bad car accident.
How about we move on to oh no, we've done that one already. The front of the FT, Katrine, this is another one that you'd picked out about a particular company being looked into over, what is it about kind of, well, it says on the headline, fueling young girl skincare obsession.
So this is a bit of a pivot, a bit of a tone change, but I find this really interesting. The luxury goods brand LVMH, which owns Sephora, is being investigated in Italy over skincare obsession among young girls, and it has a name. It's apparently called cosmeticorexia. And it is this pressure on young girls as young as 10, to have these very complicated anti-aging skincare regimes. And I don't know if you've seen this, Zoe, on Instagram.
I have, and I'm laughing just because it's so absurd,
Isn't
you know?
it?
Yeah.
I haven't just seen it on Instagram, I've seen it at home. My 2 teenage girls, they love Sephora, actually, and they're obsessed with going and getting these cosmetics, and it's all driven by influencers doing their
And there are plenty
online.
of other brands they buy as well,
Yes,
don't they? And,
yes.
and these are people who do have perfect skin because they're very young.
It's completely unnecessary.
OK, we're out of time. I'm so sorry to cut you off, but we'll see you both in the next hour. Thanks very much indeed.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?